Eddie Murphy has made his way back in the headlines this week. As you all know, Murphy is making a return into the spotlight and is gearing up for the upcoming roles as Rudy Ray Moore in Dolomite Is My Name and as Hakeem in the sequel to 1988's Coming to America. He will also host Saturday Night Live for the first time in 35 years this December, and it's also rumored that he will be filming his first ever Netflix comedy special. Just as the week ended, Murphy would sit down with the New York Times to touch on his return. Now, at one point in the interview, given the fact that today's climate in comedy is slightly different than when Murphy was in his prime, he would go on to touch on some of his classic material and would label the controversial jokes in Raw and Delirious as ignorant, mainly because some of the material would touch on homosexuality, AIDS, and used offensive words towards the gay community. Following his interview with the New York Times, Murphy would receive mixed reactions over his view backpedaling. Sports analyst and comedy fan Jemele Hill will go on to tweet her support for Murphy's new outlook. I wish the people who reject Eddie Murphy's apology or have an issue with his growth as a person would just be real. You just wish you could dehumanize and laugh at the LGBT community without retribution or criticism. If you're still saying the same shit you did at 25, yikes. Hip-hop legend Raw Digga would tweet, "We do not accept your apology. You shall remain your raw, unfiltered self. Thank you." Of course, we have to ask here at Comedy Hype, should Eddie Murphy be apologetic for his stand-up classics, Raw and Delirious?
All right, so we've been talking about this, CJ, and you weren't a big fan of the New York Times interview with Eddie Murphy. Why?
I don't think it was a good look. It wasn't a good look for comedy. You know, you see the headlines, Eddie Murphy expresses remorse for the comedy or the words used in Raw and Delirious. And it's like, express remorse for what? For what? It was jokes. They were jokes. So the thing is, it's like, what message are you sending to comedy, one, and comedians coming up behind you? You have to apologize for everything you said? Why?
I don't think that's the message. I don't think that's the message at all. I think the message that he's sending out is he has grown, he has matured. I think it would be a bit corny, and it would be kind of creepy for him to come out 30 years later telling the same jokes he was telling on Raw and Delirious. Hold on. Because if you think about it, Eddie Murphy, he's not Max from Vampire in Brooklyn. He hasn't been in a casket for the past 30 years. You know, He hasn't been in hibernation. This man has lived a life. He got, 10 kids? 11 kids? There is so many other things to talk about. And I think it was smart of him to be ahead of the game and come out and let everyone know ahead of time that, okay, these were jokes I cracked 30 years ago. It's cringeworthy to watch now.
I don't like the fact that you're downplaying and saying arguably two of the best comedy specials in comedy history is cringeworthy to watch. Or you're remorseful for what you said. He's not the president of the United States. The president has said worse stuff than what Eddie Murphy said in Delirious and Raw. And we haven't gotten an apology yet. Stop trying to make comedians apologize for being comedians. He was a comedian, and the fact is, if you see one of the greatest comedians of our day and age apologize, and he hasn't apologized yet. He apologized in 1990.
I was going to say he didn't apologize.
Right, so that's okay. But the fact that I'm hoping that we don't start seeing this Eddie Murphy apologetic tour. The same thing Kevin Hart did, you know. The fact that he apologized in 1996. We get it. You're getting ready to go on tour. You got a couple of movies coming out. You got a Netflix special coming out. People are going to ask you about Delirious and Raw. Don't start downplaying Delirious and Raw just to appease cancel culture. Let them know. I want him to stand in that. Let them know. I'm a comedian. Those were jokes.
Watch things, old podcasts that you've done, old tweets that you've put up, old pictures, old videos from college. You watch that stuff that you was in 10 years ago and you do this. Oh, I can't believe I wore that. I can't believe I was dancing like that. I can't believe I said that. So just because this man is a legend, he's not allowed to grow. Just say that you want him to come out and take the cheap route, do the cheap jokes, get the cheap laugh.
So what Dave Chappelle did was cheap?
No.
Because he talked about gay people?
Dave Chappelle, it made sense for Dave Chappelle because Dave Chappelle has been criticized over the past 5 to 10 years over what he's done. That's very recent for Dave Chappelle. Eddie Murphy hasn't been on the stage and done stand-up in 30 years.
Which proves my point. That's all we have to go off of. Eddie Murphy made fun of gay people, and guess what? When he made fun of gay people in the 80s, gay people wasn't as prevalent. So if Eddie Murphy wants to come out and talk about gay people in 2019 and 2020, where gay people are at the forefront of the public and mainstream media, he should be able to without having to apologize or be criticized.
Why are you so against his growth? How do you know Eddie Murphy doesn't have gay kids? How do you know Eddie Murphy doesn't have someone close to him that's died from AIDS? So at this point, what was funny to him 30 years ago isn't funny again. He's creative enough to find something else to joke about. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Sade, comedians make things funny that isn't funny. That's what they're good at. That's what's brilliant about being a comedian.
So you want him to just talk about gay people?
No, see, this is the thing. This is what y'all are doing. Y'all are turning this into a gay issue. It's a bigger picture than Eddie Murphy coming out and talking about gay people or talking about AIDS again. The picture is way bigger than that. It's as far as having the right to be an outspoken comedian without being criticized for it. So when Jamel Hill tweets, just say that you want to talk about the LGBTQ community without having... It's not about that. It's seeing a comedian, one of the greatest comedians of all time, have to apologize for something he said in the 1980s.
He never apologized.
He apologized in 96, and now he's saying he's remorseful. You and me both know that he's saying he's remorseful so he don't have to face the backlash when he go and host Saturday Night Live, as his new Netflix special come out, as his new movies come out. Eddie Murphy don't want that smoke. He doesn't even own a computer, so it's not like he's sitting on social media and reading everything. His team is around him telling him, look, cancel culture is probably a lot more aggressive than they were in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So instead of Eddie Murphy standing in his position as a comedian and saying, listen, I am a comedian. That's what comedians do. We make jokes. If you don't like it, fine. That'll set the tone for comedians that came up behind him. Because now you see one of our greatest comedians of all time remorseful and apologizing. What does that tell comedians behind him? So, what are we doing here? We just apologize for every damn thing every comedian has to say. What are we doing now?
So how do you think this is going to impact his new special?
I hope he don't come out on some politically correct stuff, hoping not to offend a certain community. Because if he do, then we're going to get a Dr. Dolittle Netflix special.
Now, he has numbers and probably goals that he's trying to reach that he set years ago. Beverly Hills Cop was the third highest grossing comedy movie of all time. So when he comes out with these movies and then these other classics, when he comes out with these movies, he don't need none of that negative controversy around him because you got a bunch of dorks sitting on the internet digging up some shit from 30 years ago. Go ahead, be ahead of the game, address it, let them know I've grown. That was some jokes I cracked 30 years ago. I was going through a heartbreak. I was a different person. X, Y, Z. It's the same thing Eminem did in the damn movie 8 Mile. You cannot come for somebody who has already covered them tracks, who's already living in their truth. I think that was a brilliant move that Eddie Murphy did. So now whoever tried to dig up anything, you're just going to look stupid. He already addressed it.
You sound ridiculous. And the thing is, you act like Eddie Murphy is foreign to criticism. Go back to his interview. I want to put it in this clip. Go back to his interview he did with Byron Allen back in 2000, I want to say 9? Mm-hmm. Back in 2009 on the 25th anniversary of Delirious DVD. Mm-hmm. He said he made fun of people that protested him. People protested him for shooting Harlem Nights in LA instead of Harlem, New York.
And you know, what drove you to talk about those subjects at that time? AIDS? You know,
that was just the stuff that was going on. That's the stuff. AIDS was new, and people didn't know about it. It was the stuff that was in the paper. You know, a comedian talks about the stuff that's going on in the world around him, and that was the stuff that was in the world around me. You know?
Yeah, and you took a lot of pressure for that. You know,
oh, absolutely, yeah. But it was part of it. It was a different time. I remember they used to picket the show, and they used to do all kinds of stuff. But you know,
they used to picket your show when you went on tour.
Oh yeah, I've been picketed. Because you know. I just talk about everything back when they weren't talking about anything. So if you said anything about gays, you had the gay people at your show. No. You know, anything you said, anything about, they would pick it. You know, and then there was a thing back in the day where it was it was almost like if there was any type of controversy with anything, somebody would always pop up and be the spokesperson for it and be on the news talking about, no, we feel this is wrong, and it would just take it and go for anything. I remember I did a movie once where I did Harlem Nights, and because we shot Harlem Nights in L.A., the people of Harlem was going, it is wrong, it is wrong. It was them ticketing me, you know. Like, where's the movie? He should shoot it here. He should shoot it here. But you don't shoot movies in Harlem. You shoot them in Hollywood. No, no, no.
Now you're like, what, 20 years old, and people are on the news, you know, protesting you and about your routines, and what are you thinking at this point?
I'm thinking, I'm hot. I've got some heat, huh? they're tripping. I never paid any of that stuff any mind. It's always a small group of people or an individual or somebody that was, you know, I always felt like somebody wanted to be on TV or something anyway, so they were taking a shot. And it was part of it for what I was doing. It just came with it.
He made fun of them. He said that's what comes with being a comic. And he said, I don't listen to that type of stuff.
So he's wrong for being ahead of the criticism?
No, he's wrong for not standing in his place as a comedian and standing behind what he said. No one says you can't grow. You can grow as a man, of course. Eddie Murphy's 58 years old now. We don't expect you to come out in a red leather suit, woo, 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 making ice cream jokes and talking about gays. We don't expect that, but we damn sure don't want you apologizing for what you said in some of the greatest specials of all time. No, because we don't need to lose Eddie Murphy to the cancel culture. And he even pointed out in that interview as well, if you watch it, same thing I said, the cancel culture is a small group of people. They're a small group of people who probably wish they were on TV. I don't pay any attention to them. So keep that same energy in 2019. Don't give in to this small group of people to appease your critics because you're scared of what they gonna say. You letting the comedy game down.
Just say you want Eddie Murphy to drop the F word and go. Just say you want him to be hurtful and go.
No, I want Eddie Murphy to not to not care what critics have to say. So let us know in the comments below, guys. Should Eddie Murphy be apologetic for his past comedy specials, Raw and Delirious? Until next week, it's CJ and Sade with Comedy Hype News.